I posted an extremely cryptic clue in a pinned comment on my last RimWorld video, saying that I'd be playing a different game next, something isometric with zombies. The intelligent among you will have guessed the game, since it was pretty obviously Starsector. I really love this game. I've played it a few times now and done pretty much everything you can do in the vanilla game. Luckily, it's moddable, and since the good folks have been at it for a while now, there's plenty to choose from. The mods I'm using today are the same ones that former YouTuber, now turned Twitch streamer Robaz used when he played most recently. Watching him was what gave me the itch. Or maybe it's the crabs, but the mods here are a healthy but not insane set of additional factions, ships and equipment. I made my character, this fully helmeted fellow named Goblin Deez Nutz, because the small part of my brain that's responsible for naming characters in games got stuck somewhere 10 years ago. If you're Goblin on Deez Nutz, go ahead and hit the subscribe button while you're down there, yeah? Alright, sorry, back to it. With Nexerelin, you get to set up a few of your starting conditions, so I chose to start unaffiliated with any of the factions, which I think is supposed to be the hard start, but it's really not that difficult. I selected a small trade fleet consisting of Munsbit and Tarsus freighters along with a little Vigilance class frigate. And I started at level 3 with 75,000 credits too, because I'm a trader, so I get to be wealthy from the jump. Choosing my early skill points is always pretty simple for me. I like to chase down all the very important skills in the industry tree before I do anything else. Incremental bonuses to fleet and ship maneuverability and weapon range are dwarfed in significance by massive savings of supplies and fuel. That's how I see it, at least. So with my character and fleet created, I happened to spawn next to one of the modded factions, the PRV, or the Space Swedes, and I wasted no time, immediately running as many drugs as I could to the nearest Luddic Path station. After a second trade between the Rust Belt and a pirate world, I was already sitting on a comfy 277,000 credits. Enough for me to start poking around the shipyards for something. I grabbed an old reliable mule as well as a frigate called the Flammer, which to be honest I'm not sure I like, but I didn't know that yet and it was new and shiny to me, so I bought it. I ran a couple more trades in system and added a few more ships to the fleet, including a Cerberus with shielded cargo holds for storage, and a Condor light carrier, armed with these interesting little phase bombers called Calc, as well as a Claw fighter wing. So what I have now is a perfectly capable little fleet for some nice and safe exploring. I headed out to the nearest unexplored systems to have a poke about. What I'm looking for really is blueprints, mod specs, and a healthy stock of armaments to fit out my eventual fleets without having to worry about what's in stock at a given station. I found a couple of cool blueprints, including one for a PRV battle carrier called a Vayud. Then in the second system I explored, after killing a single lone remnant frigate just because I could and it made me feel like a big strong man, I stumbled right into a derelict Legion XIV, which was handy. After I finished cleaning up in that system, I ran off to the nearest hegemony military station to fit out my new toy, giving it a healthy complement of bombers. 3 of these little Swedish meatball wings which fire funky ABBA-themed torpedoes and particle beams, backed up by a pair of longbow kinetic bombers. Always a favourite of mine, firing Sabo warheads. Whilst in civilized space, I did a bit more completely legal and above-board freighting work between Tritachyon and Luddic Path stations to help top up my credit balance. In the process, I came across a Vindicator-class heavy cruiser and recovered it. It has this special cannon built in that I quite like the look of, called the Gungnir, which fires a large splintering projectile at long range. It's very fun to watch it delete frigates, but it also helps keep decent flux pressure on larger ships thanks to its relatively high fire rate. I grabbed another mod ship called a Vulture, which again I didn't like much, but I didn't know that yet either, so I spent 142,000 credits on it. It's not bad at all, but not 142,000 credits good either. At least not with the armaments I had available at the time, maybe later with a more advanced fit, but probably not. And now it's back to exploration. Immediately finding a second Legion XIV, because apparently the sector is just sopping wet with the things for some reason. That was followed shortly after by a handy Atlas super freighter to carry all of my stuff and things in. After an hour of flying around looting abandoned stations and killing small remnant fleets, I'd collected a good little stock of gear, as well as having learned a load of mod specs and blueprints. For some reason I seem to be finding a larger proportion of PRV Starworks blueprints, so when it comes time to make my own ships, they'll most likely come in flat-pack cardboard boxes. But then a load of remnant fleets came after me, so I bravely ran away back to civilized space to fill up on cash once more before heading out in search of a half-decent system to settle in. On the way, a random scavenger for some reason decided they wanted some. After defeating them, I was able to unlock the skill that this whole game so far had been leading up to, the one that removes demods from your fleet over time. hull restoration. What a blessed thing it is. Even the most rusted out shitboxes can now be recovered without worry, safe in the knowledge that in a few months they'll be just like new. But my survey mission wasn't going great. Almost every system I was searching was full of volcanic worlds with abundant ore supplies, but they'd all be nightmarishly expensive to get set up because they have 9 billion% hazard ratings. And all of this exploring was turning out to be quite expensive, so once more I returned to the core worlds to spin up some cash in a completely legitimate manner, selling burner phones in sketchy neighbourhoods. Whilst back there I picked up a load of these Corp MRM systems. I fitted 2 to one of my legions and gave them a quick test against some baby remnants. They're pretty good. Maybe later I can fill a dedicated missile boat with them and make them the ultimate frigate bully. I found a derelict onslaught which contained the location of a planet with extensive ruins, so I recovered it and mothballed it before heading to the ruins it had revealed. That same system also contained a Terran world which, upon surveying, also contained ruins, as well as a load of other nice things. So finally I had a world to settle. I named it Terra because I can't resist and started building the farms there to get some cash flow going before committing to the whole battle station thing. I have some soil nanite thing that should make this planet single-handedly carve a chunk out of the market share for food in the sector. And then I went over to the planet with the extensive ruins on the other side of the system and surveyed it too. It's nothing special, but that's always been good enough for me. So I settled there too and named it Mars because, again, I just naturally fall into making 40k references with even the slightest prompt. I started building on there too and left them to it whilst I went in search of more money in the core worlds. There was a moment where a Sindrian Diktat military station was under siege from a massive horde of pirates, but I was just there to offload 2,000 domestic goods and some crew. Only after the pirates had finished with the station and started to disperse did I go after a few of them to collect some extra cash in bounty rewards. In the meantime, back at home, my industries were finished and it was time to spend a load of credits on making stations, and then go back to bounties. I did this for about 2 hours, picking up any interesting ships and weapons I found along the way, including the Eld, another PRV Starworks job. It's a very pointy ship, built for stabbing. I quickly fitted it up and bullied a mule in the simulation. It seems fine, but I suspect it will crumble in an actual engagement. Now this is a part of the game where you hurry up and wait. 2 planets, neither of which are particularly profitable yet, so you generally have to support them by earning credits in other ways while you give them time to grow. So I was splitting my time for a good 6 hours between trading, system bounties and exploration, checking in on the core worlds at regular intervals to see if anything interesting was in stock, slowly building up my collection of guns and ships. But of course I'd much rather make my own. And at this point I've got a lot of the blueprints I want. So now that both Terra and Mars are size 5 and can support 3 industries, I closed down both of their tech mining operations, neither of which produced anything good by the way, and replaced them with everything I'll need to start producing ships in faction. Mining, refining and heavy industry. Then I also stuck light industry on Terra as well just for good measure. Neither of them have rare ores and neither of them have particularly good regular ore deposits though. I only put mining on Terra because it has abundant organics which support the light industry. I'll also need to set up a gas giant for fuel production at some point. The goal is always to reduce the need for outside imports, because for one that increases your income, but also because if suddenly everybody hates you, your industry doesn't grind to a sudden halt. Now I've skipped over a whole lot of things to get to this point. There's about 10 hours of video between colonizing these planets and where they're at now, so I'll just cover some of the highlights. I found a load of small spatterguns and fitted them to a hilarious little meatball frigate, turning it into a properly vicious little thing that absolutely loves to go behind people and ruin their day. I took personal control of it for a little joyride when I was helping out with defending a Persian League station. I also grabbed an Astral, which is my favourite of the vanilla carriers. As I've discussed before on the channel, I adore playing as a summoner in video games, and carriers are just spaceship summoners as far as my lizard brain dopamine receptors are concerned. The Luddic Path were doing stupid things on Terra, so I went and showed them what happens to people who do stupid things on Terra. 2 more planets were settled in the name of the Emperor in a system not too far from home, Strip Mine 1 and Strip Mine 2. I probably don't need to tell you what I settled them for. Then I went to the Outer Rim to collect the small horde of gamma cores that's required to support all of these industries. While I was out there, I found a high-level Sindrian Diktat blueprint package as well as the location of a Domain-era mothership, which would have to wait for some time because right now my fleet is kind of shit. Too many carriers and not enough supporting guns. But that's why we're building those industries I was just talking about. And would you look at that, they're finished. So now we can actually make good fleets to protect our homes, as well as manufacture ships and weapons for my own personal fleet. This finished just slightly too late though, since the remnants have apparently organised and decided to send 3 fleets at me. So I hurry back from whatever it was I was doing up here, to await the arrival of the remnant menace. And like I said, at this point my fleet is kinda garbage. It's not very coherent, and I think that it's far too biased towards capitals, consisting of a conquest, the astral that I command from, a legion, and that onslaught that I found earlier, propped up by a collection of vindicators, punishers, and a vulture. I'm probably not that good at fleet composition and fitting ships in Starsector because my playstyle has always heavily skewed away from combat, which I feel like is less doable with Nexerelin, as I find you get a lot more bad folks just showing up to fuck with you once you start to settle. So my wonky ass fleet bravely faced off with the remnant ships, who arrived in far greater numbers than expected, and with some very scary battleships that are either new from an update or a mod. I don't know which. It took a series of protracted battles with rushed fleet repairs in between, which is another thing I'm not sure whether comes from a base game update since the last time I played or from a mod, but the fact that I can interact with the station as normal even while it's in combat. Either way, it was extremely helpful, and I almost certainly would have gotten completely reamed without it. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, protracted battles. So protracted that I'm padding the script here so that there's more time for footage of my valiant defense of the throne world and the God Emperor of mankind. Wait, what do you mean I don't have the footage? My recording stopped 20 minutes earlier because the drive affectionately named Butthole filled to capacity and Shadowplay doesn't warn you about that while you're recording? Well, ain't that some shit. Anyway, let's talk about what happened in the 45 minutes or so of system defense while you see a rough reenactment of the events that I'm talking about. This is why YouTubers don't often play games on Iron Mode. We need those save files for all kinds of random stuff, including moments like these. I'm gonna go buy some more hard drives now. I really hate the Radiant class battleship. It truly is a hateful ship. It's able to just not be there anymore whenever it comes under threat, usually finally going down once it teleports itself all the way back to the edge of the battle space. However, there is a bright side. All this combat with large remnant fleets including battleships results in a lot of AI cores. After the dust had settled, I was sitting on 3 alpha cores, 9 betas and more gammas than you can shake a Hephaestus assault gun at. Yes, that's how Hephaestus is pronounced, I googled it. So there. The remnants are gone and Terra stands firm. Don't look at Mars. Mars is fine too, but don't look at it. It's fine though. Just don't look. What's next for Goblin Deez Nutz? In case you'd forgotten, that's what the guy in charge of all this is called. Well, the ultimate goal is sweet conquest. Wresting control over a chunk of the core worlds. But if I try to do that now, I'll have my cheeks righteously clapped. I think perhaps what's necessary is a training montage, but that will have to wait. This is long enough already for today. I hope you enjoyed this. I get pretty full on addicted to Starsector whenever I play it, so there'll definitely be more in the near future, but as always let me know if there's anything in particular you'd like to see on the channel. And please remain indoors. For all you know, there's remnants outside. And thanks for watching. Until next time, goodbye.